Welcome to Speak for Yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley on the day before Friday. Happy Thursday to you. All right, we have a fantastic show planned today. We're going to revisit some of our conversation with Isiah Thomas from yesterday. Rick Bucher will join us in the second half of the show to reset some of that conversation and find out whether we think, do we believe Isiah really doesn't have a problem with Michael Jordan? We're also going to get into the reports that Dak Prescott was offered the richest contract in football, a chance to be the highest paid quarterback, but he wants allegedly north of $45 million. We'll do that in the next segment. But we're going to start where we started yesterday, and we're going to bring back LeVar Arrington, and we're going to talk about haircut gate with Ben Roethlisberger. Yesterday, you guys saw it. Marcellus and LeVar nearly laughed me off the air, had my dear friend Isiah Thomas laughing at me because I tried to compare Big Ben's haircut to the Civil War heroics, and I tried to compare Big Ben basically to Ulysses S. Grant for getting a haircut during this pandemic. These guys laughed me off the air. They didn't get my point. They had Isiah laughing at me. So now I've come up with an analogy that I think they can relate to. I think this would be much more accessible to Marcellus and LeVar, and it involves one of the greatest TV shows of all time, The Golden Girls. I don't know if you guys remember The Golden Girls, but when you're a Ball State educated like me, The Golden Girls actually came up with the popular saying, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." Not Franklin Roosevelt. It actually was a 1987 episode of The Golden Girls when Rose had this irrational fear of speaking in front of people, and she had to give a speech at her aunt's funeral. She had to give a eulogy at her aunt's funeral down in the Bahamas. And then Dorothy had a fear of flying, and Blanche had a fear of being in a confined space with bald men. All of this came to fruition. They flew down to the Bahamas. Dorothy's afraid of flying. There's a bunch of bald men on the plane. And, of course, Rose is afraid to give the speech. Show plays out. The fears were all irrational. And I say that to LeVar and Marcellus. The Golden Girls tried to teach you in this very classic episode, we have nothing to fear but fear itself, that we can't let fear control us. And that was the point I was trying to make, and I think as it relates to the coronavirus and the statement that Big Ben and his barber were trying to make is like, hey, we're moving past fear. And that's why I call them the black and golden boys. Of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers colors are black and gold. But to me, the sports world has to move beyond this irrational fear that is being promoted by the media. And I think that those of us that get to work from the comfort of our homes and still get paid right now, I think we don't have the perspective of Big Ben's barber and other working class people who need the world to restart. And look, there is risk inherent in life and in living. And I'm not suggesting there's no risk of the coronavirus. I'm saying we're over the top with our fear, and previous generations faced challenges similar or just as dangerous and kept functioning. And that's what I would like to see happen from the sports world, because I think it's very important. The sports world is very important to our culture. They can be a leader. I like what Big Ben did here. It's just a small, subtle thing. It's not great heroics. But to me, as the sports world, we've overdosed on fear. And so I want to open back up the conversation and see if Marcellus and LeVar can see where I'm coming from today, now that I've broken it down with a Golden Girls analogy rather than a Civil War analogy. Has the sports world overdosed on fear, Marcellus?
No, they have not. Only thing I'm getting from haircut gate is an overdose of ignorance or entitlement. One or both. You tell me. This situation, look, respect to the barber, respect to all small businesses out there, but let's not confuse who this guy is. He's just a jock sniffer who got caught up in Steeler Nation and wanted to compromise our nation for Steeler Nation and the opportunity to cut Ben Roethlisberger's hair in hopes that they can return to the Super Bowl because he touched the garb of the great Ben Roethlisberger. This is crazy for anyone to say this is even a small gesture of protest for small businesses. How? He didn't even take any money from it. If you're a small business who right now is desperate for the economy to open up so you can make these transactions, if he's going to be a poster child for that, at least make a transaction from the rich and wealthy Ben Roethlisberger, but he didn't. And don't give me this whole protest that he was doing it to bring shine to him and this small business and his barber shop, because we would have known who he was or the barbershop's name until he got the governor's rebuke. So I hear you in terms of the kernel of truth that you're standing on. You're saying, look, freedom comes at a cost. Liberty comes at a cost. Opening up this economy is going to come at a cost. But this is the wrong example to use for that message.
Well, first, I'm going to start off by saying the backhanded compliment of taking it away from the Civil War is pretty creative on your part, first and foremost. But making it another backhanded compliment by comparing it to the Golden Girls, which, by the way, Blanche was my first cougar crush when I was growing up. But I do think that the sports culture, the sports world has overdosed on coronavirus fear, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the sports culture is not afraid of the coronavirus. All right, the sports culture is built on and bases it's off of achievement, off of competition. So when I think of our sports culture and I look at how many guys are still exercising and still working out and going about their daily lives and trying to prepare themselves, I look at it from the standpoint of people are definitely overdosed by the fear factor, because we all know in sports and sports culture, fear is not a word that you use unless you're saying, I'm going to use it to drive me. It's a driving force. It's not what you build the premise and the, the pillars of what competition in sports represents.
I'm going to say this, trying to jump off your point, LeVar, that there is risk in sports, in football, injury, serious injury in football and some of these contact sports, ultimate fighting, boxing, whatever. And athletes make that calculation of how much risk is involved in these sports. And all I'm saying is, let's be driven by the data. And the data says, pretty overwhelmingly, young people, particularly healthy young people, coronavirus is not a death sentence. And so that also means even your children of these young athletes, the data says that it's not a real health risk for them. And so do I mean to say, let's go out here willy-nilly and just open things up? No, that's not what I'm saying. But we have overreacted to some degree, and all of this talk of no college football season and California, no pro sports, and I know Gavin Newsom has backed off, but I just think a lot of us that are in the media or celebrity athletes, we are so addicted to Twitter, and Twitter drives so much of our thinking and makes us interpret everything based on politics rather than just common sense. And so Twitter has made this thing, if you're for opening the economy, you're a Republican. If you're against it, you're a Democrat. And people start making decisions based off that. Some of us are removed from politics, and my only concern is my dad was a small businessman in Indianapolis my whole life. My mother was a factory worker who lived check to check. These people that are going without right now, we have to stop this, and this is why I say sports world. We have to be leaders because we've always been leaders. Yes, there is risk. Some athletes may get sick. God forbid, some athlete may die. But I still say we must continue on because the people that founded this country and set it up for us all to have the opportunity to live the remarkable lives that these three guys talking on TV are living, they made some courageous sacrifices and did not allow fear to control their attitude, behavior, or actions. And I just think we've gone a little overboard with fear.
I disagree. The fear of reality can be substantiated by numbers. And as you're pointing to, there are numbers that can say that our fear is out of control. But the fear of the unknown can't be substantiated with these numbers because it's unknown where this could go. You look at China right now facing their second wave of the coronavirus because they opened up, quote unquote, too soon, whatever that date is. So you have to be very careful of the two different fears that we're talking about right now. And let's just be real about the sports world. I have underlying conditions. I am asthmatic. If I were active as a player right now and you told me I could go play, I have a real conversation to have with my family on top of other athletes out there as well. And this situation to me comes to hit me like it's not just about me, the athlete. Yeah, I'm young. If I didn't have underlying conditions, the 70, 80, 90% of the athletes who don't, it's about their families. It's about, does my mother feel every hit that I'm taking, every compromised situation I'm in? My grandmother, I'm putting them in harm's way when I go out there and say, I'm fine, but I'm not so certain you are. So it's a whole different situation when you look at these guys. And to the business owners out there, my heart goes out to you, but I'm also going to be real. As you said, our country was founded on taking risks. Guess what? First rule of business school, they tell you most businesses will fail. They tell you that from hello. Now, if you don't want to accept that, you can walk out the classroom. But the point of it is we're taking risks with our health, but you're also taking a risk even being a business owner. And you can't go out there now and get rid of or expire those same risks because you have different incentives or different desires.
You know, I like both points that are being made, but I do tend to lean a little bit more towards, and with this being said, I understand the asthmatic aspect of it, and I understand the health risk and components of making sure you do things the right way, right? But let's be real here. Here's another reality to present.
Okay.
Guys are still preparing for seasons. Guys are still doing their off-season training. As it applies to sports, and we're talking sports culture, is it an overdose? It is an overdose because if you I talked to a few people yesterday, right? They were laughing at our conversation and our topic of Ben getting his haircut. You know why? Because a few of them had already gotten 2 or 3 haircuts already, right? So we're talking about
right.
people, the people that are really out here and they're competitors or they're, you know, you look at it from the business owner's perspective. I get that. But as a sports culture, they're already out. They're already out. They're already figuring it out. They're already moving about. So it's kind of trying to figure out how does that match and meet up with what you're talking about with these people in their businesses, Whit and Marcellus. But as far as a sports culture, it has been an overdose because sports culture is not accepting that we have to stop life because of the COVID virus.
And listen, obviously, if you got a TV and you're looking at me right now, I have a pre-existing condition. I'm overweight. There's no question about it. I don't think the world should stop to protect me. If I get caught up, that's on me. I don't want life to stop for these young people. I defended Dak Prescott when he was out there working out with friends or whatever. I said, I get it. I was once young. Go get it, young man. I'm going to defend all these guys. And again, I think it's incumbent upon us as men, as athletes. We have to be leaders in this situation, and we have to act on faith and move beyond our fear. That's just my point of view. We may circle back to this one more time tomorrow. All right, but stay where you are. We're going to get to Dak Prescott wanting more money than everybody else in the NFL. Cowherd says the Cowboys should move on and play Andy Dalton. We'll tell you what we think about Cowherd's opinion. Speak for yourself. From the Crib, presented by Hyundai. More after this.
A healthy lifestyle should be easy, right? Eat veggies, drink green smoothies, exercise to get your heart rate up, and do yoga to bring your heart rate down. Woo! Maybe not so easy, but there is something that helps improve everything, and you can do it with your eyes closed. It's sleep. Sleep Number knows what it takes to sleep your best. The Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed lets you choose your ideal firmness, comfort, and support on each side, your Sleep Number setting. It's the perfect solution for couples. These beds are so smart, they respond to your every move and automatically adjust to keep you sleeping comfortably all night. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. And now, for a limited time during the Memorial Day sale, save $1,000 on a new Sleep Number Special Edition Smart Bed, a queen, now only $1,799. You only find Sleep Number at Sleep Number stores or by visiting www.sleepnumber.com.
Welcome back to Speak for Yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. Happy Thursday. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley, joined once again by LeVar Arrington. Let's move on to Dak Prescott, the Cowboys quarterback, who still doesn't have a contract extension. He's been franchised by the Dallas Cowboys. Chris Sims of NBC Sports reported that Dak turned down a 5-year, $175 million contract, that he wants the last year of his contract to be more than $45 million a year. Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, some of the more credible NFL reporters are somewhat shooting down Chris Sims' report. But our very own Colin Cowherd yesterday offered the opinion that Dak's contract demands are too outlandish and that the Cowboys should move on and play Andy Dalton, let Dak Prescott hit the market. I agree with Cowherd. And so I'm going to ask you guys, Marcellus, should the Cowboys consider moving on from Dak?
Unfortunately, if this is true, yeah, it's time to start looking elsewhere. I had teammates when someone got a little too rich with their taste, they used to say, oh, you trying to play Gucci. And you got to be careful if you're Dak Prescott right now, because right there behind you on that roster, they got a nice Gucci knockoff. His name is Andy Dalton. And it's funny, when I first got drafted to Buffalo, my teammate Derek Holmes used to shop at Walmart for all his clothes and all this stuff. And I was like, why you at Walmart, man? You in the NFL, you got all this money. He was like, because of who I am, people gonna always think it's real or think it's expensive. And he just got away with that. And it's funny, whoever's quarterback in this roster, this Dallas Cowboys team of 2020 is gonna look good, gonna look real, gonna look nice, because they have a squad. Be careful, Dak. You're starting to price yourself out of a position.
I don't think it's time for them to prioritize moving on from Dak Prescott yet. I think you got to understand possibly what the offers are here. If you're talking about he was offered roughly $175 million over 5 years, guys, it comes down to guarantees. Because to sit there and put out there in the media that this makes him the highest paid quarterback is very misleading. Why? Because you and I both know, Mr. Marcellus, if you say 175 without saying that very magical word at the end, guaranteed, you don't know what you're making, right? It could be $35 million a year. If he's guaranteed 35 the whole way, take it. If he's denying guaranteed for 6 years, then yeah, you got to think about it. But if that money is not guaranteed and you're talking about backloading the contract and they take it away from you in year 2 or 3 because they cut you, it's no good. I think let's get more details before we talk about moving on from him.
Look, I think that this is part of the attack on Dak Prescott from Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones that I've been saying has been coming and coming. Chris Sims is not a reporter. When there's real news coming out of the Cowboys, it's James Slater, it's Ian Rappaport, it's Adam Schefter, it's Ed Werder, it's Clarence Hill. It's the guys that cover it day to day. Chris Sims, not knocking him, former quarterback on NBC Sports. Somebody, to me, is probably sliding him information because they want it out there. The number that I think threw everybody off is this desire for, allegedly, according to Sims, he wants $45 million a year at the end of this deal. That's what I think Cowherd and other people are reacting to, and that I'm reacting to. I've always felt Dak's eyes are bigger than his stomach. He's not a guy that truly moves the needle. He's got to play that role. I think his record last year against playoff teams was 1-6 in his alleged, career year. I just don't think his career year warrants Dak approaching Russell Wilson or any of these elite quarterback level. Dak is a $25 to $28 million a year quarterback, and I know the market says Jimmy Garoppolo, blah, 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 but that's who Dak is. His eyes are bigger than his stomach. Play Andy Dalton. I agree with Cowherd.
Look, you don't have to be a reporter to break some real news. I found out that when I broke the Jim Harbaugh news about him going to Michigan, it was just my homeboy who saw the contract send me a text. He was like, look, I know where he's going. All of a sudden, the world came. Marcellus doesn't know anything. Yeah, I did. I knew it before all y'all did. I don't know what channels y'all were going on, but sometimes it comes from places you don't expect. And to your point of $45 million, even that number, which sounds absurd right now, let's rewind time. 2 years ago, when Jimmy G was the highest paid quarterback after only 7 starts, and he was making $27 million. Now we're already at $35 million with Russell Wilson, and that's in 2 years. So now you're saying a 5-year deal, and in 2 years they jump up $8 million. So let's say 2 more years they go up 8. 2 more years you go up 16, and then you still got 4 more, $20 million. Potentially, if Patrick Mahomes is still doing him. $55 million might be the quarterback number using the numbers of the past as precedent. If I'm Dak Prescott, if I'm CAA, I'm sitting there like, we could be looking at a ceiling of 55, and you want me to sign on a dotted line right now at 45? That's the only argument I can hear from their side.
And that's why I just say, I end my argument by saying, guarantee the 5-year contract at $175 million, and you got a deal. That's $35 million a year. If you got a problem with getting $35 million a year guaranteed to you because that's off pace with the current market, then you got to consider moving on.
Listen, Dak's an average quarterback who should be thankful if he makes $30 million a year.
Oh,
anything
man.
above that, somebody needs to be fired. But we're going to keep it moving. We're going to talk some NBA. We're going to react to our extended interview yesterday with Isiah Thomas. Isiah had some tremendous things to say. Rick Bucher watched it all. He's going to join us. We're going to find out if Rick is buying that Isiah Thomas has no beef with Michael Jordan. I'm not sure I am, and I love Isiah. Speak for yourself from the crib. All right, welcome back to Speak for Yourself from the crib. Happy Thursday. Speak for Yourself presented by Hyundai. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley. All right, let's go out to the Bay Area and bring in our NBA expert, Rick Bucher. Yesterday, Rick, you saw Marcellus and I conducted a wide-ranging interview with NBA great Isiah Thomas. Isiah had some very interesting things to say about Michael Jordan and the Last Dance documentary. We started out the interview just basically asking Isiah what he thinks of MJ. We've heard what MJ thinks of him. He called Isiah an a-hole and said he hated him. Listen to what Isiah said he thinks of Michael Jordan.
I'm going to call timeout on the feud because really, I wasn't fighting him. I was winning all the time. I was winning the majority of the time. So why am I mad at him?
All right, so Isiah basically says he has no concerns or no problem with Michael Jordan. Rick, are you buying that?
Not for a second. First of all, in the entire interview, he found about a half dozen different ways to slice and dice Michael Jordan, beginning with the comment simply, why would I be mad at him? I beat his ass all the time. Why would I be mad at him? When we were both healthy, I was the better player. I wasn't competing with him. I was competing with Magic and Bird. Essentially, he's saying, I can't be mad at somebody. He doesn't even deserve to sit at my table, is what he was saying. Now, on top of that, he said in the course of the interview that he learned from The Last Dance that maybe Michael had more to do with him not being on the dream team than he had previously thought. And we know that Isiah has a problem with not being on the dream team. Therefore, it stands to reason that if he has a problem with not being on the dream team and he now realizes that Michael had more to do with that factor than he previously thought, he, by deduction, has to have a problem with Michael Jordan. And trust me, and you know him, Jason, anybody comes at Isiah Thomas the way Michael Jordan came at Isiah Thomas in The Last Dance, there's no way that Isiah Thomas is okay with that.
I say he has the smallest problem that you could have with another person. More, you're annoyed, irritated by them versus disturbed by them. This is Michael Jordan being a fly at Isaiah's picnic. Not a bee, a fly, where Isaiah's just like, man, move. And it's because Michael Jordan is taking things out of context and smearing Isiah Thomas's name. I understand exactly where Isiah Thomas is coming from, because Isiah is sitting there with a healthy mindset that his identity is not wrapped up in his ideas and his competition and who he was as a basketball player. Like, that's not his full identity. Whereas Michael Jordan will make a handshake a competition. Isaiah's like, dude, when I put the jersey on, my job is to whoop your ass, and I did it a lot, and then after that, I'm good. But you're taking what we did on that court with our jerseys on and now taking it to when we got our T-shirt or our suits on. Why are you doing that? Every athlete knows that you're supposed to hit a switch. It turns it on and it turns it off, and not at your pleasure. It's by the participation in sport or participation in life. Isiah comes off like, look, I'm not happy that he keeps talking about me in this way, in this light, but trust me, I get sleep at night every single night.
Listen, Rick, here's where I would certainly agree with Marcellus. There's levels to having a problem with somebody. And there's a big problem, and then there's small problems that you just keep moving on and you don't think about them on a day-to-day. And that's where I think Isiah actually is. And it's sometimes people can get to that place where, look, I'm just going to be the bigger man. It is clear, I think, and this isn't what Isiah told me, this is my read of the situation. Isiah, to me, clearly is like, man, Jordan has some issues. I mean, because if he's got this kind of hostility with me 30 years later about a handshake, that he's talking about he hates me and, you know, calling me an a-hole on TV. And I know Michael's saying, that's what I thought about him then, but, you know, you should have clarified that on TV. And so I just think Isiah is really in a spot where he's like, yes, this is annoying what Michael's doing, but clearly there are some issues with Michael that I just don't have. Michael holds on to grudges. Michael operates from a place of anger where after, you know, the competition's over in our basketball career, that was 30 years ago. I'm just not in that place. And so I do think Isiah, because of the Dream Team deal, has a small problem with Michael Jordan. But in comparison to the problem that Michael seems to have with Isiah, that's nothing.
I'll agree with you to this point. If Isiah truly had a big problem with Michael, he would have never sat for The Last Dance. He would have refused to be any part of that. So I agree with that. But very slyly, and there's a reason that one of his nicknames is the baby-faced assassin, is Isiah will come on and he's still competing too, because he's telling us all the things that the Detroit Pistons represented and that they're not being recognized to the level that they should by Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, or the NBA in general. So that competition between them, whether it's they're wearing a uniform or not, that's still ongoing. And I dare say that's why Isiah did The Last Dance. And by the way, it's one of the questions that I would have loved to ask. So why did you do it? Why did you go on? Why did you participate in this thing, not knowing what the end result was going to look like? And I believe it's in part because Isiah still has a message that he wants to get out there too.
I hear you, Rick. I just think that Isiah sat down because he's in a healthy place. And he's like, look, we had our wars. We helped build each other up. I have tremendous respect for him, not only as an opponent and player, but also as a businessman and the icon he's become. Respect to that. Yeah, I'll sit down and talk glowingly about Michael Jordan, because you already know built into me talking good about Jordan is that I'm talking great about Isiah because I was better than Jordan, or in my mind, our team certainly was better than Jordan's in our healthy times playing. So if you're Isiah, you really don't think you have anything to lose. And who is to fathom that he still is holding on to this grudge with that type of grip? And then he would not only do it, but he would continue to replay the same grudge. I think Isiah got caught off guard, really got sideswiped by MJ's mindset and MJ's feelings towards it versus where he was. So I would have done the same thing if I were Isiah. Sat down, gave him his props.
Yeah, I think Isiah sat down with the interview because, one, it's like he knows there's a narrative about him and the Pistons that was going to be portrayed in the documentary, and he wanted his say-so to put some spin on that. You got to remember, what's left on the cutting room floor? I'm sure they asked Isiah a plethora of questions, and a small percentage of it actually made the documentary. And so I don't blame Isiah for he knew the thing was going to be popular. He presented himself in a really classy way. And so I think the documentary actually a good look for Isiah. But let's move on, because here's one thing that Isiah provided context on yesterday that moved me. And again, I'm someone that knows Isiah well. I remember all of this once my memory is pushed. Isiah made a point about what led to them not shaking the Bulls' hands after getting swept in the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Before that, they won, I think it was after Game 3. Michael Jordan called us undeserving champions and said that, we were bad for basketball and everything else. Now, we had a long, hard journey to become champions. We had to fight through Boston. We had to fight through LA. And we had a lot of ups and downs, just like every champion does. And we felt that we deserved our championship and worked hard to get it. And to have him say that we were undeserving, that really did cut, and it cut deep.
All right, I think this leads to a real question for me, and I was glad he reset this. To me, what was worse, Isiah and Bill Laimbeer not shaking hands, or before that game, Michael Jordan taking a major shot at the Detroit Pistons, undeserving and bad for basketball? Marcellus, I'm sorry, we'll start with Rick. Rick, what was worse, the handshake or the shot taken before the game?
For me, without question, it's what Michael said, because he is delegitimizing their championship. And he's saying, for me, the handshake is, I don't respect you, Michael, or I don't respect you, the Bulls. For Michael to say what he said is, nobody respects you guys. You're not legitimate champions, and you're actually a deterrent when it comes to the game itself. So if we're talking about which one was the greater diss or which was far harsher, without question, what Michael said and did, because he has to know in his heart how hard it is, no matter what year, no matter what the circumstance, to become a champion. You never become a champion by accident.
I'm with you, Rick. It's saying that they were undeserving of being champions. I mean, good Lord, what kind of God complex do you have where you think that someone that you can't beat actually doesn't even deserve what they accomplished? As my teammates in Jacksonville used to always say, go get it with your muscle. If you want something, hey, we both started this season 0-0. If you couldn't get it, you didn't get it with your muscle. That's it. Let it go. But Jordan wants to go down on that one. And not only does he feel that way, he hires a production crew to double down on the same wrong, ill feeling. How can you not legitimize what they did? You actually, through the wars and battles with them, sharpen your knife to get to the point where you guys were dynastic. But to not give props just to kind of elevate yourself, bad look, man. It's those comments.
Yeah, total agreement with you all. And I just want people to understand where Isiah is coming from in this. Detroit, they're representing Detroit. If you know anything about the city of Detroit, it has a lot of pride because it doesn't have a lot of economic high-end achievement. It's a depressed city and area. And so when Michael Jordan takes that kind of shot at a black city, and Isiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, or the Dennis Rodman, they're the major representation, Bill Laimbeer, the major representation of that city and what that city can achieve. And then you, from a very elitist point of view, say that's not legitimate. You're undeserving. You're Detroit. You're basically bad for basketball. They had every damn right to be offended, and it doesn't excuse what they did, but Isiah has apologized for the lack of handshake. Has Michael Jordan said a damn word about taking a dump on what they accomplished? And then to further delegitimize Isiah Thomas because you got a grudge about being frozen out in an all-star game when you're a rookie, you hold him off the damn dream team. You try to diminish this man's entire career. Of course, to me, what Isiah did was much worse. Rick, we're going to stop here and move on because it's a perfect segue to our next segment. Everybody stay right where you are. We're going to come back and discuss whether you feel better or worse about Michael Jordan in the aftermath of the Last Dance documentary. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley, Rick Bucher. Speak for yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. More after this. Well, I'm about to speak for yourself. Today's big story is sponsored by KFC's $20 fill-up. Drive-thrus open or get delivery by Grubhub. All right, welcome back to the show. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley. Rejoined once again by Rick Bucher from the Bay Area. Let's continue our discussion about Michael Jordan and the Last Dance documentary. And we interviewed Isiah Thomas yesterday. He had some very interesting things to say, providing context and clarity in his relationship with Michael Jordan. We've heard from Horace Grant saying that Michael Jordan told a lot of lies in the documentary. We've had a boatload of Michael Jordan's teammates critical of Michael Jordan and the documentary. Scottie Pippen allegedly is unhappy with the documentary, although I don't know why. But anyway, the question needs to be asked and answered. Did the documentary make you think more or less of Michael Jordan? Marcel, let's get us rolling.
It makes me think less of Michael Jordan because he violated the most important rule as a teammate: protect the guilty. You got to protect the guilty when you're going to come out. If this is a documentary, whatever you want to call this, you have final say, final approval. The two producers are your close friends. You got to protect the guilty because we've all stepped in that locker room before. And I didn't like the fact that he would come out here, double down on some of the issues that he's had, get a production crew that actually gives his controversies emotional content. The retiring, the gambling, everything that Michael Jordan went through, the Republicans buy sneakers too, he was allowed to expound on the emotional content, the driving forces behind that. But when it came to the teammates, he just exposed it and then moved on. And a lot of times he didn't even expose and balance the good with the bad. So as someone who wrote a book about his life, I'm not Michael Jordan, but I knew to protect the guilty because I'm not going to sit there and think that I'm bigger than thou. And it's crazy that this documentary could have been amazing. All he had to do was lift everyone up in the process of showing how great he was. But instead, he rather step on their heads and just show how much bigger and better he was than them. I think a little less of them.
Yeah, my first inclination is to say it doesn't make me feel more or less. It doesn't change who I thought he was or how I feel about him because I knew all about him then. But I would say, if anything, if I have to pick a side, I would say I think more of him as a result of this documentary because he is so resolute in who he is. The things that he says about Scottie and Horace, and he said all those things back then. The tune has not changed. The dude's competitive fire, the dude's grudges, everything about him has not changed. He is, if nothing else, consistent. Good or bad, who he is who he is. And a lot of times we want to reinvent ourselves. Michael does not do that. And perhaps the greatest thing that he does with this documentary is he proved himself to be the best player in the league. And then he started to see, you know what? Somebody may be trying to take that crown from me. Somebody may be gaining on me. I need to set this straight. And even though he's not playing anymore, he found a way to reclaim his crown by doing a 10-part series where everybody goes, oh, wait a minute. we were dumb in making these LeBron comparisons. Like, Michael is the GOAT. He did it not once, he did it twice. And I got to take my hat off to him. You might not like the way he did it, but the fact is he did it, and I got to admire that.
I'm going to say, surprisingly, I think more of Michael Jordan. I have far more pointed criticisms of Michael Jordan and things that where I can go, man, I really don't like this. I don't like the way he bullied his teammates, particularly teammates at the low end of the totem pole. And if you listen to some of his teammates at the higher end of the totem pole, they were like, where's the video of us standing up to Michael Jordan and calling BS on him trying to bully people? And so that's a bad look for Michael Jordan, in my opinion. Obviously, I have a real problem with his actions, comments towards Isiah Thomas. I now have full clarity on that and don't like those things. Here's the out I'm going to give Michael Jordan. He's a flawed human being like every last one of us is, but Michael experienced something that most of us didn't. And this is why I think more of him and I overlook the flaws. The man's father was murdered. And the media somewhat insinuated that Michael had something to do with it. I'll say this. Love my dad. If my dad was murdered, oh my God, the pain would be so enormous and change so much of the character of me that perhaps I would walk around with a bit more anger and hold on to grudges longer, because it's hard enough losing a parent, but murder in such a senseless fashion, I think that is a part of the equation of why Michael has a bit more anger, can't move on and be in a better place like Isiah Thomas, and probably, and again, I'm sure Michael was a bully before his father passed on, but that probably accentuated some of Michael's bully tactics. And so for this guy to have survived his father's murder and to still achieve at the high level he did, and to be overall, I think, a good person and a self-aware person despite his flaws, I actually think more of Michael Jordan.
Man, you want me to follow that up? I mean, you got me over here tearing. You know, I lost my mom, too, and I'm thinking, good Lord, I got more criticism for Mike, but right now I got a lot of empathy for him. But at the same time, let me do my job. I just thought that Michael Jordan, who makes $100+ million a year off of just shoe royalties alone, should have stayed in that protected, rarefied air of his greatness, the pre-social media existence of his greatness. I just thought that he should have stayed there and let that speak volumes, as obviously it does, because we're still craving Michael Jordan and we're still hungry for all things Jordan. That said, he didn't. And he felt LeBron coming closer to him, and he wanted to set that record straight. But I think in trying to show how much greater he is than anyone else, he actually opened up a conversation for someone else who does it differently, who does it in a way that he's trying to bring all together, not just him on top. He introduced LeBron to the GOAT conversation even greater than he was before this documentary.
Yeah, bottom line for me is he has continued to be who he is. He was that at this Hall of Fame induction. He was that in this 10-part series. And you may not agree with all of it. And as Jason said, we're all flawed. I was aware of his flaws then. We're aware of his flaws now. And he was still the greatest player of all time in spite of those. I'm going to tip my cap to that.
Yep. I like what Michael Jordan represents, masculinity most, and we're in dire need of that in this time and era. So anyway, all right, Uncle Jimmy's around the corner. We're going to wrap up this edition of Speak for Yourself and get to Friday and get to the weekend. All right, Speak for Yourself from the Crib, presented by Hyundai. More after this. Welcome back to Speak for Yourself from the Crib. All right, let's roll to Uncle Jimmy. Uncle Jimmy, you got to be quick today because we're going racing right here on FS1, the Xfinity Series, right from Darlington, right after you. You got any thoughts on Big Ben?
Look here, I want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Jason Mouthy. Look here, I had no idea that you had a desire to want to go to medical school, considering how much hard work and late nights you put into failing at Ball State. Okay, but look here, let me tell you something. Look here, let me tell you something. I just want to thank you so much for what you did and everything you did for our society. Okay? Look here, thanks to you and thanks for what we do. We can do without you, and we can do without the blue M&Ms. Okay? You're gonna learn enough. Thanks to this blue coronavirus. You gonna get it. Bye.
Shut up, Uncle Jimmy. We're going racing.